Hello and welcome. We are excited to have you join us today for Host Analytics Live Demo Webinar. My name is Gina Miller and I will be your host for today's event. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions during the webcast, please click on the Q&A widget at the bottom of your audience console and submit your question. We will try to answer these questions during the webcast, but if we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. We do capture all questions. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the green Maximize icon on the top right of the slide area or by dragging the bottom right-hand corner of the slide area. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately 90 minutes after the webcast and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. Now let's take a look at the agenda. Today's meeting will run for approximately 60 minutes. We will cover an overview of how cloud solutions differ from on-premises solutions. We will then walk through how our solution works with the product demo and end with a Q&A. I would now like to turn it over to Pamela Theriault for the rest of the presentation. Welcome, Pamela.
Thanks, Gina. Hi, I'm Pamela Theriault. I'm a solutions consultant with Host Analytics. Just wanted to take a quick minute to introduce myself so you'll know who you're talking to today. So at the end of the day, I always call myself Simple Finance Girl. That's really my roots. I started in accounting and finance. I worked in the private sector for a number of years. And during my stint in FP&A, I actually evaluated and helped implement one of the legacy Hyperion tools, Hyperion Pillar. So that was way back in 1994, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, right? Anyway, in 2000, I started working directly for Hyperion, doing implementations of Hyperion Pillar initially, and then Hyperion Planning and Essbase. And then I began working with the entire EPM suite. Long story short, I spent a very long time, over 12 years at Hyperion and then Oracle by way of the Oracle acquisition of Hyperion. But I came to Host Analytics almost 3 years ago now, and I'm really thrilled to be part of Host Analytics for two big main reasons. One, I continue to work with my finance and accounting brethren. I love helping you folks get to a safe place so that you can do your jobs well, and at the end of the day, still get to go home and be with your family, right? For me, that's what it was all about. The other reason I love being part of Host Analytics is I love being part of this cloud technology. So being able to deliver the rich functionality of these enterprise performance management tools, but with a very light touch of IT and being delivered from within the cloud. So that's who I am. I'm always going to be approaching all of my interactions with you as a finance professional because that's just who I am in my DNA, and I don't know how to talk techie. So that's who I am. So let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about the EPM technology because I think it's important before we get into the software itself just to give you some baseline. So you've heard me actually use this acronym a couple of times. Shame on me. I'm not supposed to be using acronyms of EPM. And all EPM stands for is Enterprise Performance Management. Depending on which analyst you talk to, sometimes you'll hear it called CPM, BPM, FPM. It's all really the same animal. What we're really talking about is everything you need for the office of the CFO. So whether we're talking about planning and forecasting, long-range plans, strat plans, budgets, rolling forecasts, right, all of that planning activity, as well as our close activity, right, bringing our information in from multiple trial balances, doing topside journal entries, doing some elimination activity, maybe applying currency conversion to close our books. And then if you look at that picture, it actually looks like a pie, right? I love pie, by the way. So if it looked like a pie and you split that pie in half, doing the planning and the forecasting and closing the books is really only half of the pie. The other half of the pie, and the really important, in my opinion, the really important part of the pie and the part that allows you to stand apart from the rest of the crowd is the reporting and the analytics. So to be a true enterprise performance management solution, you need to have all of those facets. And that's what we're going to talk about today is Host Analytics Enterprise Performance Management System. Now, EPM is great. It's been available, though, for a number of years now. I know I've been using EPM tools for over 15 years, right? But the whole notion of delivering EPM via the cloud is a fairly new thought. Now, there are a lot of benefits to being part of that cloud revolution. I did want to take just a moment, though, to explain what I'm talking about when I'm talking about cloud. Sometimes you'll hear the term SaaS, S, two small A's and a big S again, software as a service, and cloud, and they're used interchangeably. And all we're really talking about is delivering our application to you via the internet. So there's no hardware for you to install. You are not responsible for doing the upgrades of the software. That's all stuff that we take care of for you behind the scenes. And that allows you as accounting and finance professionals to just do your jobs, right? You don't want to have to worry about, do we have the latest security patch, for example. That's all taken care of for you. Now, we think cloud is pretty cool, right? But it's not just Host Analytics that thinks cloud is pretty cool. The analysts are also jumping on board, saying that really cloud delivery of software is the way the marketplace is trending, not just for EPM, but across all sectors. So this is where we're going. You know, when you think about back in, if any of you are old enough to think about back to the late 80s, early 90s, when we started getting off mainframe computers and started using PCs, it feels a lot like that to me, like we're starting to make this transition over. And, you know, as I mentioned, we're seeing this across industries. So EPM, you know, we're, as finance and accounting professionals, we tend to be a little more risk adverse, so we're not going to be the first ones to stick our toe in that water, right? There might be a shark out there. But cloud's been around for a while. You know, we see stuff like Siebel being replaced by Salesforce. And now Salesforce is the largest CRM provider in the world, regardless of them being cloud or on-premise. They are the biggest. You know, we see Workday replacing companies like PeopleSoft in implementations. And similarly, Host Analytics is looking to help you with your enterprise performance management needs with the same level of functionality and richness in the applications as you would expect from a Hyperion solution, but again, delivered via the cloud. And it's so much easier for you than those traditional on-premise solutions because you guys are always working on the latest and greatest. You know, you're going to stand up your applications so much faster. You're not going to be relying on IT for IT projects. So let's do this. Let's get out of PowerPoint world and let's actually look at my application because I think you guys probably logged on not to see PowerPoints, but to actually see some software. So I'm just going to share my desktop. And I guess I kind of fibbed a little bit. So I said we were going to get out of PowerPoint, and I'm going to actually start you in PowerPoint. But I'm going to start you in PowerPoint for a reason. So Host Analytics is going to deliver end-to-end solution for you. So what you're looking at in front of you is a budget book presentation, right? And I know for me, if I can actually get my PowerPoint to engage, I know for me, when I did PowerPoint presentations back in the day, I would pull content, and sometimes it was textual comments with information like numbers embedded in that commentary. I would have reports and charts and graphs. I'd have different people contributing to this board book. Some of you are filing Ks and Qs. It's that same kind of, I need to get lots of people involved. I need to have lots of different information all baked together into a PowerPoint or a Word document. The difference between this PowerPoint document and the ones that you guys are preparing today and the ones that I prepared, you know, in my days, is that this deck was prepared 100% from within Host Analytics. And I'm going to show you how this deck was created at the end of the presentation. So I think of myself a little bit like Julia Childs. I'm going to show you the pretty picture. So I'm going to come out and show you the pretty cake at the beginning of the presentation. And then we are going to break some eggs. I'm going to show you how that cake was made. So now, as I promised, let's look at some software. So I apologize. There is a little bit of latency with the ON24 delivery system, so sometimes I'm talking and I don't realize the screen's not displaying. So you should be looking at live software right now. So I have logged into the web. So a couple things I want to point out. I'm assuming for most of the folks on the phone today, this is your first chance to see Host Analytics. So I'm going to give you today's presentation. We have about 50 minutes left, but some of that's going to be Q&A. So with the amount of time that we have, I obviously cannot deep dive on any particular area. My thought is I think of today's presentation as a first date maybe. And if you see something you like and you're happy with some of the stuff you see and you want to go deeper, give us a call. Right? Contact at hostanalytics.com. We'll hook you up with a solutions consultant such as myself. We'll try to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish, and we'll show you what the software would look like in your world. Right? But for today, let's go tops of trees, and let's just talk first of all about the application itself. So at Host Analytics, we are 100% committed to delivering our service in a cloud delivery mode. All right, so I'm going to pause and say that again because I think it's really important to understand we do not offer an on-premise solution and a hosted solution and a cloud solution. We're seeing a lot of the vendors out there kind of muddling the message around cloud and software as a service, kind of taking advantage of the fact that folks don't necessarily quite understand what cloud is just yet, right? And what they're essentially doing is taking software that has been written, the code has been written to be delivered as an on-premise solution, and they're just lifting and shifting it and putting it into a hosted environment. It's not true multi-tenant SaaS. People are not all working on the same code line. If you're doing any kind of customization in your application, it doesn't transport over to the next version. You guys are still going to be responsible to do those upgrades of the software. All of the pains of on-premise solutions still exist in that hosted world. So don't be fooled by that. Don't be duped by that. All right? Host Analytics is not doing that. We are delivering our software only as software as a service. That's it. And what that means for you guys is 100% of our resources at Host Analytics, all the way down from the guys writing the code back in the, I always think of them as dark rooms, I don't know why, but the guys writing the code are writing that code to be securely delivered via the internet. And that's a very different thing, and that's as technical as I can possibly get. But from those guys all the way up to our senior executive team and everybody in between, we are laser focused on delivering a highly performing, high functioning enterprise performance application via the web. That's all we do. Now, again, assuming this is your first blush with the application, I just want to show you a couple things before I start diving in and clicking around. So one of the things that makes Host Analytics unique is we actually offer the entire Enterprise Performance Management Suite as a single application. So running across the top of the screen, you see my different modules: budget, consolidation, reporting, scorecard maintenance. This is a single application. A lot of vendors will go out and purchase point solutions, or they'll grow them internally with different technical teams. And what you'll find is, for example, the consolidation module and the budget module will have very different architecture and different ways of creating calculations. And you'll find if you did an implementation of those solutions, you'd have two completely different implementation teams helping you because they're different animals. So you can pin it together and slap a label on the box and say it's all the same. The reality is that's not true. At Host Analytics, this is a single application, and that allows you to leverage assets across the applications. So, for example, Jazz Pharmaceuticals is one of our customers. They're Fortune's 100. Fortune's one of the fastest growing company in 2013. Just spit it out, Pam, right? They're one of our customers, and when they came to us initially, they were looking at budgeting and forecasting and reporting only. They implemented Host Analytics. Within about 6 months of using the system, their management team changed their growth strategy. And they started doing acquisitions. And because they were doing acquisitions, they are now looking at trial balance information from multiple general ledgers. So they came back to us and they said, hey, can we also turn on the light in that consolidation room? So they did. And then after about a year of acquisitions, they were a very different company, and they wanted to look at how they were doing their revenues and planning their revenues differently. So they turned on the light in the advanced planning, revenue planning module. Now, the neat thing was they were able to always leverage that common chart of accounts, for example. They set up their chart of accounts once and once only, and they just leverage it across the different rooms in the house. All right, so we're here for you. You're not going to outgrow us. If you don't need consolidations, you don't license that part of the application. If you only need consolidations, you only license that part of the application. You don't pay for anything you don't need, but when you're ready for more, we are ready for you. All right, so you can grow with us. The other thing that I did want to point out is because we're cloud-based, you always have access to us. You never are disconnected from us. So, for example, if you wanted to find help on a particular area, maybe you're making a report and so you saw somebody do something cool the other day at user conference and you can't remember how they did it. If you clicked on help and you were in the reporting area, it would automatically drop you into the online help menu into a section around reports. By the way, we're doing upgrades or updates to our software every quarter. We also update that online help. So you're always looking at recent information. It's also right from within the same portal that you could log a support ticket should you need to do so. You could access our very active user community. Our customers love to share information with each other. I was just at a breakfast yesterday that some prospects were coming in and looking at us, and we had some customers there. And at one point, one of the prospects was talking to me, and we had one of our customers there from the Boston Red Sox, and the guy from the Boston Red Sox turned to the prospect and said, hey, if you want, I can show you how to do this. I'm right down the street from you. And that's how our community works. We're very collaborative. We love to share. It's also from within here. If you want to submit ideas about enhancements you'd like to see to the software, you do it right in here. Our customers all vote on it. 80% of our product enhancements since I've been with the company have come directly as a result of customer feedback. So we're listening. We want you to be happy. If you think this is a good idea and other customers think this is a good idea, we're going to try to bake it right into the software as soon as we possibly can. It's also from within here that I can access training. So as part of your service, you'll always have access to training, formal training when you begin your implementation, but also as we're rolling out new features and functions, you'll go out there and you'll find there'll be a 5-minute video or a 10-minute video showing you how to use this latest and greatest thing so that you can always keep up. All right, easy peasy lemon squeezy. And then the last thing that I'll talk about while I'm here on this dashboard is the whole notion at Host Analytics that we're going to take advantage of the best technologies out there to help you guys be successful. So you're going to see in a few minutes when I log into the budget module that we're going to use as an input vehicle, we're going to use Excel for the browser. That's a very conscious decision on our part, right? Our finance and accounting folks know Excel, love Excel. We're going to take advantage of that. We're going to help you guys be successful and have great user adoption. On the back end, though, we're going to store that data in a multidimensional database, right? And what we'll do is we'll take the information that's stored in the multidimensional database and we'll surface it in many ways. So in this case, we're looking at a dashboard. Maybe one of my end users is not accounting and finance trained. And when I hand them that gray and white and black P&L, it doesn't really mean so much to them. What if I could take that exact same information and render it in a picture on a dashboard like this? And when your VP of operations came in, he's looking at this dashboard as he's drinking his morning cup of coffee, and he's looking at metrics that are important to him or her. All right, you guys decide, your users decide where you want to start. The beauty of this is you can use and leverage the assets that are here as part of Host Analytics as you need them, as your user community needs them. And you guys know your user community much better than I do. All right, so when you start thinking about who you want to get information out to, what would be the most meaningful way to serve it up? So let's do this. Let's spend a little bit of time in the application, and let's talk about consolidations. All right, so I just launched another tab here, and you notice that I've clicked on the consolidation module. So again, we're going to stay tops of trees, but I am going to just spend a few minutes talking about consolidation activity. So, you know, when I think back to my days when I had my first job straight out of college, I was actually a staff accountant. And I remember one of the reasons I got out of accounting in general was I found it was very repetitive. So it's, you know, it's pretty much a science, right? Month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, we're doing a lot of the same activities. We bring information in from one or many trial balances. Right? We apply some topside journal entries. We might have some partial ownership concerns. We're going to do some intercompany eliminations, and then we're going to apply some currency conversion. We're going to roll the whole thing up and get it ready for external reporting. That's pretty much it in a nutshell, and we just do that over and over again. So I want you to know at Host Analytics, this is not a module that we just slapped on as an afterthought, you know, so we could say that we were an EPM suite. We have been doing closing consolidation activity for a very long time, about 10 years. We have some very large publicly traded companies like Sanmina, for example, that are closing their books and using Host Analytics as their book of record. We actually have over 100 publicly traded companies using Host Analytics as their book of record. All right, so we have to do this right. We have to be SOX compliant. We need to be able to take care of the big problems as well as the little problems. So that's all baked in, available for you. Staying at tops of trees, I'll just do a quick run through of topside journal entries, for example. So when we look at standard journal entries and we look at recurring journal entries and we look at dynamic journal entries, they're all kind of the same animal. So because I do not wish to bore you, that's never one of my goals, to bore my audience, and because it's just very redundant, I'll only go through one of the journal entry examples, and I think that that's probably more than sufficient. Let's look at standard journal entries. Right? So here you see I have 3 different standard journal entries. Let's just look at one of them, just so you can see that I'm not a big fibber. So I'm just going to open up this journal entry, and you'll see that, ta-da, I have a journal entry. My debits are on the left, my credits on the right. When I add them all up, they equal 0, right? So Professor Cross would be very proud of me, my Accounting 101 professor. I know how to make a balanced journal entry, right? So here it is. But I did want to point out a couple of things while I'm here. Notice that I do have the ability to post year-to-date as well as month-to-date values. I also can post in local currency or in my common currency. Best practices, post in your subs in the local currency, do the conversion in your system. I also can make this journal entry auto-reversing, all right? The other thing I did want to point out while I'm here is it's also from within this module I can attach notes or documents. A lot of times we want to document the assumptions that we're making as we're making these journal entries, so I can do that right within the system. I have that one-stop shopping. And notice I can do these topside journal entries at anywhere along the org structure. So you guys decide how you want to use Host Analytics. You can use this in a centralized fashion where everything continues to happen through corporate FP&A, and corporate FP&A is loading all the trial balances and doing all the topside journal entries. Or you can take a page from Groupon's book. Groupon is also one of our customers, where they actually have an org structure that's basically geographically disseminated. They have, I think, 72 different operating entities 40 different global controllers, 40 different currencies. And what they do is they have their global controllers around the globe. They give them a little section of the application. So, for example, if I'm the controller in North America, I would log in and see my section here. I'd load my own trial balance, do my own topside journal entries because I know my business, right? And that might be how we handle things. And then I can do the consolidation at my level, right, before we do the total consolidation. If you have partial ownership rules, we absolutely can handle that for you. Again, we've been doing this a long time. We could not be closing the books appropriately if we couldn't handle partial ownership, so we can handle that for you as well. We can work on reclassifications up and down the the income statement or balance sheet or back and forth between the different financials. We can reclassify data, no big deal. I did want to spend a moment and talk about eliminations, maybe because it was a painful thing for me. I'm assuming it's a painful thing for you. So again, back in the day when I was a staff accountant, my baby was the intercompany eliminations, and it was a miserable job. I'll just leave it at that. But I would spend a lot of time chasing down what I thought was a material variance, only once I unwound the ball of twine to find out it really was not a material variance. So one of the things that we help you with is intercompany eliminations because we recognize that's a pretty common occurrence, right? So the first thing that I have the ability to do, or one of the things that I can do, is I can come in and I can identify my different intercompany eliminations. So here I have a due to, due from. Oops, I don't want to be in here. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Here I have that due to, due from. I just want to show you how I set it up. So you set up as many of these or as few of these as you like. The first thing I did was I said, okay, if my trading partners are out of balance, the money's got to go somewhere, right? So this is my holding bucket. I call it my intercompany suspense account. The next thing I did was I identified the accounts that would be involved in this particular intercompany elimination. Again, you will identify these based on your chart of accounts and your needs. This is my demo application. And then the last thing I did was I went in and I set thresholds of tolerance. So when I was doing this job, we were a private company, and on the month end, it was a soft close, and we didn't have to have everything in balance. Quarter end, everything had to be in balance, right? That was our rules. So the rule for us was if it was something under $1,000, I did not have to track it down during the soft close months. If it was between $1,000 and $5,000, I would track it down if I had time. Guess what? I never really had time, right, because I was so busy doing everything else. But if I had time, I would get to it. But if it was in this red zone over $5,000, I had to track it down. I was not allowed to do the soft close on the month end without finding that. All right. So what I'm doing at Host Analytics is I've set those thresholds. Again, you set your tolerance. I'm not going to give those to you. I'm not going to make you go by my levels of tolerance. But what it allows me to do is systematically go in and say, okay, everybody's loaded their trial balances from around the globe. They've loaded their intercompany information. I'm going to go ahead and run a report across my intercompany due to, due from here. And what the system is doing when I click go, sometimes I talk and don't click. I think I clicked. When I click go, the system is going out and it's finding all the intercompany trading partners as well as the journal entries that were booked between them, and it's looking for the match. I hate when I forget to click. I'm sorry. You'd think after all the years of doing this, I'd be really good at talking and clicking at the same time, but I'm not always really good at talking and clicking at the same time, so my apologies. Gives me a chance to take a sip of tea. Anyway, so here I see my intercompany are out of balance, and I have a bunch of these that lit up red, so I know I've got to track down a bunch of them. But again, the system helps me identify where I'm out of balance, so I'm not chasing everybody around. So let's look at this 27,500, for example. Notice my little pointer was a finger there. That means there's additional information. When I click on it, it pulls open the journal entry between my trading partners. And in this case, I see that company 2200 and 2120 booked an intercompany transaction at very different amounts. So we're on a balance by $27,000. And now I have a choice, right? Do we want to book a topside journal entry that will auto-reverse while these two trading partners duke it out? I don't know about you, but my trading partners never played nicely, and it always took a while to get them to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. So we used to do a lot of those topside journal entries and auto-reverse them. Or if your company policy is, everything has to be forced through the general ledger at close time, then you pick up the phone and you're going to give these trading partners a call and say, hey, you guys got to agree. We got to get this booked, right? But we want to try to push some of the time out of the equation. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about close and consolidation, what we're really looking for is we're looking to speed up this process and we're looking to push risk out. Right? So one of the ways I'm going to try to do that, I'm going to put some validation rules maybe around that information, the data being loaded. Right? So what if, for example, you guys want to load actual headcount because you want to report on actual headcount? Maybe one of your validation rules would be headcount can't equal 0. And as the controller of the company, With a global controller, I always have the ability to run these consolidation reports. Gives me visibility into what is going on around the org structure. So for example, I'm in here as a corporate controller. I can see the entire org structure, but I can see very easily that I have some people have loaded data, some have not. Some have some journal entries that they have not posted yet. All right, so it gives me visibility in what is going on. And I can also see nobody has passed validation yet. So if they consolidate, they're not fully consolidate, right? They don't have all their information in. All right. Then one thing I did want to point out, I might have said it before, but just in case I didn't, I can also do sub-consolidations within the org structure. So if I wanted to consolidate Europe first, right, and not the rest of the org structure, I certainly could do that. Right. Now, at the end of the day, I push this consolidation button, and I process it. It takes about 2 minutes for Groupon, who I mentioned earlier. They have, 72 different entities, 40 different currencies, global organization. Their process of doing all that currency conversion, rolling everything up, that process of the consolidation takes about 2 minutes. So very speedy, and basically at the end of the day, it gets you ready for your consolidation reporting, right? My external reporting is now ready to go. All right, so Host Analytics, we actually drink our own Kool-Aid. I think it's important for you to know that. We have implemented the entire suite. We use the consolidation module. By implementing our own consolidation module, we went from a 10-day close to disclose process down to 5. So our senior executives have critical information in their hands 5 days sooner. That's huge. That's an amazing amount of time for them to react and make changes to what we're doing, right? So that's close and consolidation. Again, just kind of tops of trees. But at the end of the day, trying to help you manage the process, push out time, make this happen more quickly, and push out risk, making sure that information is legit, right? The right trial balances have been loaded and that all the information is there and people have done their intercompany eliminations, that kind of stuff. We're helping you do that. It's just about 12:30 my time, so let's do this. Let's segue over and look at budgeting for a little bit. And what I want to do is I'm going to switch modes just a little bit. Right now I'm in here as Pamela Theriault, super admin. I can see all, do all. I'm like the all-knowing Oz. I'm going to switch gears from a budget perspective, and I'm going to actually show you the perspective as an end user. And actually one of the reasons I wanted to come here as an end user is yesterday when I did that breakfast meeting I was telling you about, and I was talking to prospective people. We actually started the day by having breakfast together. So we're all sitting down eating bacon together. Bacon is good, right? I would say, clap if you like bacon, but I can't hear you. So I'll assume you're all happy that we had bacon. And we were talking, I was sitting at a table with some prospective customers, and they were just talking about their existing world in Excel and, just basically sharing with me some of the things that hurt for them internally right now. And then the next thing we did was we had a customer panel where we had somebody from Next Stage Medical, and we had somebody from the Boston Red Sox, and we also had one of our service providers on a panel. And they were just answering questions from the crowd and just kind of having a frank chat, which was really kind of cool. And at one point, one of the people in the crowd asked the panel, "Can you tell me what your user community looked like?" And so first the guy from the Boston Red Sox answered, and then the guy from Next Stage answered, but their answer was almost identical. In both cases, they each had about 5 users who were finance trained and operated, and the rest of their users from 50 to, I think Next Stage had they had 50 users as well, were all operationally trained. And they actually went into the system and entered their own information. And when the guy from the Boston Red Sox said that, you could literally physically feel the girls who were sitting next to me. I was sitting at a table of women, coincidentally. They actually had a physical reaction to that. And they started whispering amongst themselves, "Can you imagine letting Bob in the budget? He'd break everything," that kind of comment. So I want to share with you how the Boston Red Sox can actually have a groundskeeper. And I'm not kidding. I swear to God, one of their users is the groundskeeper. So the guy who keeps the grass green, right, and mowed, and they shave it. They mow it in that way so it looks like a dime. I don't know how they do it. But anyway, that dude goes into Host Analytics and enters his budget. He does it correctly, and he doesn't break anything. So I'm going to show you how this happens. So here you can see I've logged in as Henry Theriault. So I'm a basic end user. And a couple of things you notice right off the bat. Henry came in and he decided, I don't want to start with no stinking dashboard, right? I don't like that thing. It doesn't mean anything to me. He decided he wanted to start right in the budget control panel. That's fine. He chose. The other thing you notice is Henry's only responsible for doing planning and forecasting, and he has a couple reports he's looking at. He has no consolidation responsibilities. So notice that tab is completely turned off from him. Now, it's turned off for a couple reasons. One, I don't want my groundskeeper out there mucking around with my actual clothes. He doesn't know what he's doing. But it's also turned off so that my groundskeeper doesn't get confused. why should I have something on the screen that he doesn't even need, right? So I'm just tidying up the screen for him essentially. Now, one of the ways that I keep my groundskeeper, for example, able to enter into the budget and not muck things up is I'm going to handle the different versions of my plans systematically. So I know when I was in my Excel world, every single budget submission, somebody somewhere would send me back an old version of a spreadsheet that they had stored on their desktop somewhere, and I would try to roll Humpty Dumpty together again. The wheels would fall off. So we're going to take care of that for you systematically by locking down the scenario. So in this case, Henry has access only to my current planning scenario, which happens to be the 2016 budget. All right, you'll see a little later on that I have a whole bunch of other scenarios in here. You can have as many or as few as you need, budgets and scenarios and versions of those scenarios to do your job. I'm not going to limit you on those. You decide what you need. Best practices, though, have your budget contributors always just working in the most recent scenario, right? Just make your life easy. The other thing I've done is Henry has access and he can see his area of responsibility, which happens to be sales ops. And he can see how he rolls up into the org structure. And you already know from looking at the consolidation module, I have a whole lot more org structure here than Henry's seeing. But he doesn't need to go in and see anybody else's information, right? It would be confusing to him trying to find his own path. It would also be, maybe I don't want him in there mucking around with somebody else's budget, right? So again, systematically, I'm going to control what he sees. So I talked a little bit about how we're using Excel for the browser. So when I come down to my lowest level, my area of responsibility, I see that I have a couple of different models that I'm being asked to populate. So if we just open up this operating expense template, I love that we use Excel for the browser because it's familiar to my end users, and what that means is your end users, it drives adoption up. One of the resounding themes that kept coming through that breakfast meeting yesterday when the panel was talking, is that with very little training, very little hand-holding, they were able to have their users, even a groundskeeper, go in and populate these budgets because it was a familiar interface for them. But Excel doesn't work for a reason for us, right? There's a reason why a lot of you are on the phone right now and you're currently in Excel world. You're on the phone with me because there are things about Excel that aren't working for you. So we're going to take care of that stuff as well. So not only can I come in as an end contributor to a familiar environment, systematically as administrator, I'm going to lock down your view. So maybe I just create one template that looks like this and the end users access it systematically. But my end users can't go in and break my models by inserting rows or columns, for example. Notice that that's grayed out. Here you see I have a formula where I'm rolling up my total operating expenses. End users can't go in and key over that. And I didn't just password protect this. This line is designated as a calculation. You see I have that little C over there telling me it's a calculation. And the system understands that calculated value should not be overwritten. The other thing going on is when I created this model, I'm trying to give my end users some guidance, right? Make it easy for that groundskeeper to do his budget. So I did stuff like I said, you know what, let me give him a target value. And let me show him last year's actuals right on the same interface. He can't go in and change them, but he can use them as guide rails as he's trying to create his budget. And then the last thing that I did here in terms of guidance was I said, you know what, maybe he's not allowed to see the detailed salary. So he can't go in and see how much Pamela Terrio is making, but he needs to know how much in total his salary expense is and his employee-related expenses because maybe he's responsible for bringing in this total cost center. So this information has been planned in detail in our pre-built HR module. I'm going to pause for just a second. We have a pre-built HR module that allows you to do detailed salary planning by person. That module stands up in about 1 to 2 days. Very, very rapidly, very precise, super simple to use. Every customer I've worked with in the last 3 years is using it. But I need to bring this information in so it's stored back in the multidimensional database where it's safe. Henry can't get to it. He can't drill in and see how much the salary is, right? The system's going to prevent him from it. But notice this little RA over here? This isn't a bunch of linked together spreadsheets, right? That's one of the things that hurts in Excel. This RA tells me it's a reference account, which means that information is stored safely back in the multidimensional database, and this happens to be the data intersection where it lives. And now I've just referenced it in this model. So let me do this. I'm going to spend a little bit of time with my hands on the keyboard, pretending I'm an end user. All right? So I see I have some travel here that I'm going to plan. And, just splitting the difference between target and actual, I'll just say this is $17,000 and maybe this is $20,000. Now, those are annual amounts. My budget happens to be a 24-month budget. So I can go in and enter by year, I can enter by quarter, or I could go into each month and key, or I can take advantage of some of the system-delivered functionality. I did nothing special to make this happen. I'd love for you all to think I'm a rock star. The system is the rock star here. I just get to show you how it works. So here I have that annual value. I can spread it using any of the traditional spreads, accounting, 445, U.S. work days, calendar days. If you want to set up a special one for whatever reason, you absolutely can do that as well. Johnson & Wales is one of our customers. They're a higher ed university in Rhode Island. And, of course, the shape of their data is very different than, say, a manufacturing company, right? They have a lot more expenses during the winter months of the year, for example. So they went in and created a special spread for that. It's super simple. You absolutely can do that. In this case, I'm just going to take advantage of the system-delivered ones, and I'm going to take those two amounts, and I'm just going to apply them evenly over the months. As soon as I hit apply, it spreads out. Down here, I was using history to spread. You know, I don't want to do that anymore. Let me just clear those, because what I really want to do is I want to take last year's values, and maybe I just want to do a bump over last year. All right? So let me take last year's value, do a monthly increase, maybe just a 3% bump, apply that across. Now, the cool thing that happened when I used that spreading method was not only did I apply the 3% increase over the prior year, it actually also took on the shape of the data based on history. So if you have seasonality there, that's another way to take advantage of it. All right? I'm just going to close this up so I have a little more real estate so you can all see okay. And I have just a couple of the line items I need to plan here. So professional fees, let's see, there's no target. We spent a boatload of money last year. What the heck is going on here? I don't know what I'm supposed to plan, right? I'm Henry the groundskeeper. I'm confused. How much money do I plan this year for professional fees? So one of the things I did when I created this model for him is I gave him a little more guidance. I attached a report that gives him an overview of his operating expenses. So I can see the month-over-month spread of the values. Now that still doesn't really answer my question. Why did we spend so much money last year on professional fees? Notice again that little pointer changed to a finger. Anytime you see that in Host Analytics, it means, but wait, there's more, right? There's more information. And what you see is I've actually drilled into sub-ledger information that's been loaded to Host Analytics. And now I see that over $90,000, $100,000 was composed of golf lessons from my sales team, right? So that's supposed to be a joke, by the way. That's somebody's idea of a joke. Not mine. I didn't build it in there. I do better jokes than that. But anyway, I know now that I'm not going to plan, $100,000 for next year or $90,000 or whatever it is. Colleen or whoever is going to have to pay for her own golf lessons. The only thing I'm aware of is we're going to do some training of our staff. And that training is about $1,800 a head. So let me just do a little bit of math right here and leverage that headcount information that's been loaded into the system. And then those of you that like the Excel hotkeys, Control-C, Control-V, Control-X, those all work here as well. So I can flesh out that budget. Now notice when I entered in that information, I got another communication. So one of the other things I did was I put a little note in here. Now this is my parameter. I said if anything's over 10% over target, light it up. Give my end users some feedback here, because maybe they don't want to plan that big a number because the budget's going to be rejected. Again, the notion, let's cut the back and forth on the budgets. If I have a way of communicating with my users right in the model, how much easier can it be than that? But it allows me as a user to say, you know what, I'm okay with this being more than 10% over target because you didn't give me a target value at all. So let me give you a little note so that you know what I'm thinking. So we're going to do sales training, and it wasn't at $1,200 a head. I think I said $1,800 a head. And then I said no target value. Established. A-B-L-I-S-H-E-D. I can't spell today. So I can put a note in there, and I can click Save. Now, the cool thing about this is that note is not sitting on my desktop so that people have to call me and go, Pamela, why did you do this? It's saved back in the database as soon as I click Save. So all my data, even though it was updating live on that screen in front of me, right, I'm seeing that live interaction just like you would expect in Excel because this is Excel for the browser. That live interaction is happening, but the information is now, when I click Save, I don't have to do that pulling together spreadsheets and linking spreadsheets and all that other nonsense. When I click Save, that all happened for me. Now, the last thing I did want to point out here before we go any further is I mentioned this formula row, and some of you might have noticed it when I clicked into it because maybe you're more savvy than I am. But the last thing I did want to point out, one of the reasons we take advantage of Excel for the browser is, again, going back to my finance brethren, we are going to take advantage of Excel syntax in all of our calculations. So when I bring your attention up to this formula bar, you are seeing exactly Excel syntax. So I have to tell you, I was on a discovery call with a prospect earlier this week, and it was painful to hear them talking. I was looking at another solution. They had implemented another solution, and they pulled up just a formula, and they were showing me the formula. And it was, this proprietary scripting language. And the truth is, I can't pick just on that vendor because every other vendor in the marketplace uses a proprietary scripting language when they write calculations. We are the only vendor in the entire EPM space that takes advantage of Excel syntax for our calculations. So you already are trained on how to use this. We are leveraging the universal language of finance when we use Excel syntax. But that is a very conscious decision on our part, and we want you to be able to take advantage of it. All right? So there's my Excel syntax. Let's see. It's about 20 minutes of the hour. So I'm going to keep motoring along here. I'm just going to come out. And I had another model I was going to show you, but it's okay. It was just a simple driver-based model. Should you decide you want another date with me, I'll be happy to show you, or somebody will be happy to show you a simple driver-based model. I just want to keep moving along so we have ample time for reporting and questions. The last thing I did want to show you, though, as an end user is a lot of times we want to have some kind of process management. And particularly if you're working within an Excel world, that pretty much means a bunch of emails back and forth, right? At Host Analytics, we have pre-built workflow where I'm able to forward my budget, put a note in here, this is the best budget ever. And I hit forward. Now when I hit forward first of all, notice that I have a little audit trail here of the back and forth of this planning unit with the time and date stamp as well as the comments that were made. And when I hit forward, a couple of things happened. John Lennon, who is the approver of this budget, received an email saying, please go on and review this planning unit. This planning unit changed its work state from a work in progress to a forwarded state. Notice I have a little key down here. And then notice that Henry no longer has the ability to go in and change his numbers. So I used to always, people would send me their official budget submissions. I'd spend all weekend rolling them up, getting them ready for the meeting Monday morning. We'd go in Monday morning, and Henry would have a different set of numbers than I had because he'd been changing them over the weekend. Right? So no more of that. John Lennon is now the approver of the budget. He has a choice. If he doesn't like it, he can reject it back down to Henry and make Henry be accountable for his numbers. Or he can change them himself because he's the owner of this planning unit. But we have just one owner at a time. That's a best practice. So I'm going to log out as Henry the Basic Budgeter, and I'm going to spend just a little bit of time in the system just showing you a couple quick things administratively. So again, I'm going to click back on that Budget tab. And I did want to show you, as the administrator too, I can always see where everybody's at in the process. There's that budget in the forwarded state that Henry just submitted. So I have an ability to say, if my budgets are all due tomorrow at noon, what the heck is going on in the U.S.? I might want to pick up the phone and talk to the VP of U.S. Sales and say, dude, you got a bunch of budgets here that haven't been submitted. What's going on? Your official submission's due in, less than 24 hours. Right? Maybe that's a process I want to institute. But what I'd like to do is spend the rest of our time today working in the application and the reporting. Now, I keep mentioning that Host Analytics is taking advantage of the best of both worlds. So Excel for the front end, multidimensional database on the back end, and it's the multidimensional database where everything hangs off of it in terms of reporting. All right? So if I look at, for example, and this is not something your administrators would, or your end users would have to understand. This is an administrative task, but I did want to highlight just a couple of quick points before I show you reporting because this is the backbone of the application. So OLAP, or multidimensional databases, are the industry standard. The best-of-breed vendors all use a multidimensional database. There's at least one vendor on the Magic Quadrant, however, that uses a relational database. And what we find is that clients are kind of driving off the road here. We're running out of room. The reason that OLAP is the industry standard is two reasons. One is performance and scalability. You're not going to run out of room with us. You're going to have a highly performing, scalable application at all times. The other reason is for the reporting. So this is my application. This is my segment hierarchy. I won't go through all of the dimensions, but I did want to show you just a couple things here. First of all, you can have multiple hierarchies. So if I need an alternate hierarchy, maybe a legal and a functional and a geo, I can have alternate hierarchies. I can also, within the application, I have this natural roll-up. OLAP loves to do this hierarchical kind of roll-up. We do it out of the box. But we're going to start applying financial intelligence right at that database layer. So it's here at the database layer where I say stuff like, add these entities together so that the U.S. plus Canada equals total North America, for example. And there's my little simple math that I can do within the org structure, right? So that if I had a divestiture, for example, I could choose to ignore that member. It's also back at this lowest level that I'm applying my currency conversion. So if you're in a multi-currency world, we're going to be working in our local currency. Notice if I click on Canada, I'm working in Canadian dollars. And we also can have interim currency. So a lot of times GBP, for example, our UK entities, we're transacting in GBP. We want to report in euros, and then our reporting currency is USD. Absolutely, we can handle that. That's out-of-the-box functionality for us. The other dimension that I'll spend a little bit of time talking about, and not in great detail, but I did want to highlight the account dimension, because not only is the account dimension intelligent, it's super intelligent. And this is, again, a place where we're going to see some great advantages on the reporting side. So again, I'm watching the screen and waiting for it to catch up with me, because I'm looking at accounts and I'm not seeing it on my live screen yet. Here it comes. Here it comes. Come on, baby. There it is. Oh, that's a little frustrating because it's been sitting on my screen for a while. So here we go. So I'm looking at gross sales. Notice I'm rolling that up hierarchically as well. It's here also that I'll have that roll-up operator. So for example, if you have non-financial metrics like headcount or square footage, that all of that would be available to you without any additional hand-holding, but I can actually choose to ignore it and not have it roll in as part of my financial results. It's also back here where I'm tagging the different account types with how we're going to do the currency conversion. So for example, my income statement accounts, I want to have that average monthly rate, right? My balance sheet accounts, I'm going to have the end-of-month rate. For those of you that are doing transaction hyperinflationary places, that you can have that end-of-month history across different accounts. You know, a lot of times our inventory accounts, for example, we want to use a historical rate on those hyperinflationary. That's all out-of-the-box functionality for us. You know, you shouldn't have to do any kind of cartwheels here, and that's one of the reasons that we are SOX compliant. The last area I did want to point out here before we look over at reporting is we're also going to tag our accounts to make them financially intelligent, again, back at the database layer. So this account 4010 is a gross sales account. By tagging that account as an income account, the system automatically understands that when my actuals come in greater than revenue, that is a positive variance. I don't have to do any kind of crazy reporting calisthenics to make that sign come out the correct way. All right, the system is going to handle that for me. So with that as a backdrop, I'm going to pop over and we're going to look at some reporting. Now, one of the things I did want to point out, we did not get into this at all today, but we have the ability to do all scenario planning. So your rolling forecast, your top-down planning, your long-range planning, all that within the same application. I encourage you to ask your solutions consultant to show you that in detail. I just don't have enough time today to go through it in detail today. But all of those scenarios are now available for me for all of my reporting. So here I am as an end user back at the Reports tab. And I log into the system and I can pick up all my reports. I have the ability to have this folder structure, and I can have security around the folder structure where individuals can see the folders and see the reports within the folders. I can secure the individual folders, but remember, my security in the application is always going to follow me all the way through. So I'm not going to see anything that I should not see. So for example, if I pulled up an income statement, that we created the income statement for the entire company, but I only have access to that one area, sales ops, because I'm Henry, that's the only information that would be pulled into my income statement. Your end users can also always see their most recently accessed reports, just like you would in Word or PowerPoint or Excel. And then I also have the ability to mark, you notice I marked a few with those little red stars, making those my favorites, just making it easy for folks to find what they need. And then notice I have a full set of reports here. So all of my reporting, one-stop shopping for all the reporting for your users. I can do stuff like consolidating balance sheet, consolidated balance sheet, all that's just out-of-the-box functionality, as well as my management reporting. I can do my Ks and my Qs. I can do report books, all delivered from within the system. You use it as you need it. Now, when I talk about the different scenarios being available across the application, what we're talking about is in reporting, right? I can have, I'll just wait for the report to come up, sorry. It's on my screen. Come on 24. Maybe you guys should get out and push on 24. Come on. Oh, it's so frustrating. Come on. There it is. Okay. So any dimension at any time on any report. All right, I think that's huge, and it's important for you to understand. So in this case, I happen to be looking at current month actual versus budget versus forecast, and I'm also looking at that lagging month. And I'm looking at those year-to-date values as well. Now, what happens if, I now have closed my books, it's no longer April, it's now May, I have a new set of actuals in. I don't want to go back and touch every single report that uses that current month, right? That's a drag, and it's a big waste of my time. I don't want my finance people to be the report writers of the world. So what we have is called substitution variables, which allows you to go in and say, my current month is no longer April, it's now May. Let me make this one change in one place and one place only. And now all of my reports leveraging that substitution variable automatically and dynamically update for you. Here you notice I happen to be showing the current month. That lagging month automatically updated for me. My year-to-date values automatically updated for me. This is awesome. Now what if I want to use the same report format, but I no longer want to look at just a total company? Maybe I want to start looking at some of my individual business units or lines of business. So let me switch my view right on the report. I'm still in HTML. I'm still live connection to the database. Let me pull that information not for the entire company, but just for North America. So with one quick click, I just changed my view, pulling back the latest and greatest information from the multidimensional database into that income statement. All right? Makes these reports dynamic. It means your end users become the controllers of their own destiny, and you guys can get on with your lives and do better things with your time. I don't know about you, but I didn't go to Bentley College and spend all that money and put myself through school so I'd be writing reports and wiping people's noses and tying their shoes, right? That's what we wind up doing as finance people because we're so encumbered by our existing systems or lack of existing systems. Here I have a P&L format. Again, same deal. I happen to be looking at an income statement, but now I'm looking at an income statement, actual versus budget, month to date and year to date, fully formatted report. So I talked to a number of people who are using other systems, and a lot of times they're dumping data out to Excel to format the reports because they can't do formatting within the system. Not the case at Host Analytics. Fully formatted reports, bolding, shading, fonting, I have your logo up in the upper corner, live report in HTML at all times. But even though it's a live report in HTML, I still have the ability, for example, to drill on that little plus sign and drill down through the database and see additional information. I can also, at any time, output this report to Excel. So what if for some reason I have a user of the system, somebody called me, asked me a question, they want to be able to see this information. They're not a user of Host Analytics. I need to get the report out to Excel because sometimes we just need Excel. So I'm never going to take that away from you. You always have the ability to output reports to Excel. You can output those input models where I was going in and entering information in the system out to Excel. But when we get out to Excel, notice I didn't just dump raw data. So here I am in desktop Excel looking at live data, but I'm not just looking at a data dump. I'm looking at the fully formatted report. Even the logo came through, and all the formulaic logic came through as well. And notice that the formulaic logic that I'm using, just waiting for On24 to catch up here. Come on, baby. Notice that the formulaic logic I'm using here is also Excel syntax. So you are not going to learn proprietary scripting language at Host Analytics. You guys got better things to do than learn Chinese. We're going to take advantage of that universal language of finance and keep using Excel syntax. The last thing I did want to show you, and by the way, while I come back over here, if you also want to dump out a bunch of reports to Excel, right, I can actually use report collections to do that, group them together, have them go out, run as a batch process and be distributed via email. I can even attach the reports right into the email if you wanted to do that. System-built functionality available for you. Now, one of the questions that a lot of times customers will ask me is, what if I need to add a new account or a new product or a new project or a new entity to my org structure? Pretty common occurrence. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a new account here. So let's pretend we have a new account. We'll call it Pamela's Revenue. I'm going to get enough revenue to buy a horse. That's what I'm going to do. And remember, I'm going to apply that financial intelligence right at my database layer. Doesn't like my apostrophe. Right at my database layer, and we're going to say this is an income account. I'm going to save this once it's saved to the system. So you just saw me add an account to one place and one place only. And what that allows me to do as an end user is come back to the system, come back to my report, open my report at any time, and that account will automatically be picked up. I do not have to go back to every report that I created. I don't have to go back and create all those crazy data intersections. The system is doing that for me automatically with no additional work on my part. So here we are back at that income statement, and when I bust it back open, you'll see Pamela's revenue there. So that's my horse fund, right? There's no money in it yet. Feel free to send donations. I'm sorry, I laugh at all my own jokes because I can't hear you laughing. Anyway, so I'd have that account roll in automatically, right? We want that for our system. We want integrity in our numbers. At the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. If I have to remember to go insert an account in the appropriate place or a project in the appropriate place every time it's being used, I'm likely going to forget one because my phone is busy and I'm a busy person and I'm human, right? We don't want you to have to remember all of that stuff. The last thing that I'll talk about before we look at that final output to PowerPoint is I know when I was in FP&A, only half of my job was at management reporting. The other part of my job was ad hoc analysis, right? People would come in, they'd ask me questions, and I'd have to find an answer to it. So within Host Analytics, using the exact same report writer, I have the ability to create ad hoc reports. So this report happened to answer a question for me last month or last year. You saw when Henry was in his report earlier that he did that drill down and he pulled up that transaction information. I did want to make a quick note here. Notice that transaction information, first of all, is available all through the application. Any place I've loaded it, we're looking at subledger detail in Host Analytics. I've not been passed back to the general ledger. All right, that's a big distinction. We're not going to charge you to store this data. You store as much data as you need to do your budgets and for your analysts and your folks to be able to do what their jobs, basically. In this case, not only did I load subledger information, I keep talking about the Boston Red Sox today. I guess I have baseball on the mind. They actually use this functionality, and what they do is they scan a copy of an invoice, they put it out on SharePoint, and embedded in their transaction detail is a link that looks like this. And it allows the end users to, with one single click stream to go all the way from the highest level of detail all the way down to a scanned copy of the invoice, all staying within a familiar world of Host Analytics without digging around in the wild, wild west of the general ledger. So anyway, I started this section saying, somebody called me and asked me a question. This report answered the question last month or last year or something like that. I now have a new question to answer. Somebody else called me, my phone just rang. Let me answer this question. So I'm just going to open up this report. I'm going to start with a report that I already had. I'm going to not have to start at ground zero every time I have a question. And I'm going to click on that little dotted triangle in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to work with this report. So this is 2014 data. That's stale data. So I'm going to just click on the tile that says time. And I'm going to say, you know what, I don't want to look at 2014 data. I want to look at the first quarter of 2015. So I click on the tile, I pull up the dimension members open that I have security access to, and I click on the appropriate time period. Again, I'm just waiting on ON24 to catch up with me. There it goes. I realize my talk track is out of sync with the screen that's showing. So I select the appropriate time period. And what would be really cool is I don't want to look at just time. What I really want to do is do an actual versus budget comparison, because then that's kind of how I think. So I'm just going to drag that tile up to the page, and I'm going to pull scenario down to the column. And just like you saw me do before, when I click on the tile, I see the dimension members that I have security access to. My job at Host Analytics is always to define what goes on the page, the rows, and the columns. That's all I'm doing here. And then the last thing I want to do on this report is maybe I want to see, who my naughty children are. So I want to see this report by product, by company. So I pull down the tile called company, and I pull that down to the rows. And then I click run, and my report reruns. And then I'm able to do that ad hoc analysis right on the report where I can drill through the different dimensions. We are running short on time, so I'm going to stop talking about this report because we're losing a lot of time with the ON24 latency. So the last thing I did want to show you before we jump over is I just wanted to show you that budget book presentation. I won't go through all of it in the interest of time today, and I did want to have a chance for questions. But notice this document, just a couple of things right off the bat. First of all, my output can be to PowerPoint or Word. All right, that's one of the advantages of being part of the cloud. We originally released this document to be output to Word. Customers came back and said we wanted it in PowerPoint too. Within 1 quarter, the software was enhanced to have PowerPoint output as well as Word output. And because you're part of that cloud environment, you automatically get access to it. And then I have all my different content types that I can create right within the application. So here I have an agenda slide created automatically. Here's my text file. So I came in and I said I want this to be textual commentary. My end user came right in, entered the information right into the application itself, even doing stuff like leveraging those substitution variables. So here's an example of that substitution variable, budget revenue. pulling back the information from the database. So we're always going to interact live with that database. We're going to be pulling, so think about all those places that you reference, gross margin or net income or EPS in your K's and Q's or your budget books or your board books. I can do that systematically because the real pain of these kind of documents isn't creating it the first time. We all know how to do copy, paste, attach, right? We all earned our CPA. The problem is I get the whole deck finished and it's 80 slides or 100 slides or whatever it is. I think I'm all done and some jerk made a big adjustment in the actual numbers and I need to do that all over again, right? Or maybe it's a new quarter, it's a new month. At Host Analytics, I literally click generate. It takes like a minute for this deck to generate. And then at the end of the day, this is the output that we're looking at, right? That we're looking at that, for example, textual commentary blended with numbers pulling live from the database. I'm pulling in live reports there, right? Those reports we were just looking at, I'm pulling those from the file cabinet. Here's one of my graphs and another report. All that information just live. And again, we're latent. All right, I'm going to stop talking, Colleen. Gina, if you want to open it up for questions while this is just
Sure,
toggling
great.
through.
Yeah, we are running a little short on time, but thanks, Pamela. If you'd like to ask a question, please make sure that you click on the Q&A icon. The first question we have is, how do I get my actual data into Host Analytics from my source systems?
So great question. It's one of the questions everybody asks. So whether you're taking information from a trial balance or any other system, your payroll system or your CRM system, it doesn't matter to us where the data is coming from. We're data source agnostic. But we offer you 3 options. First of all, you can always load manually. At any time, you always have the ability on demand to load that information. We also, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the ability to automated loads at scheduled times where Host Analytics will reach right into your general ledger system, for example, or Salesforce, and pull that information into the system, again, at a cadence that you define. Just to make implementation a little quicker for you and easier for you, we have pre-built connectors to most of the general ledger systems as well as Salesforce and some other systems. So we may already have a pre-built connector for you depending on the system you use. All right, so completely up to you.
Great, thank you. I think that's about all the time we have today for questions. If we didn't get a chance to answer your question, we will get back with you offline. Thank you very much for joining us and have a great day.